Good evening. It's a nice Monday evening, and we thought we'd do a little bit of a live chat and listen into the Tesla earnings call for Q1 of 2021. So we have a few of us waiting. 28 of you. Welcome. It's not a traditional Tesla Owners UK event tonight. It's just a very much have a beer, in my case, and just have a read and listen to Elon and the rest of the Tesla team for the Q1 earnings call. So it's nothing professional. Don't expect anything mind blowing. But two things really. If you've got any questions or points that we've missed, which we will have missed because we've barely read the Q1 2021 update PDF, but please put that in the comments. And secondly, if anyone wants to come and chat on here video wise, feel free to speak to either myself on Facebook or Twitter or Josh or Andy on Facebook or Twitter, and we can send you the link to join if you are more knowledgeable than us in this aspect, which is probably quite a few people because we're not the best. But we just thought we'd relax and chill out and speak to anyone that's got any questions, go through the PDF, and then wait for obviously Elon to start his piece, which should be in theory about sort of 25 minutes, something like that. So for those that haven't seen it, if you go to ir.tesla.com, that's the investor relationship page, and on there is a shareholder deck, which obviously is for Q1 2021, released today about probably 45 minutes ago to an hour ago now. So take a look on there. We're going to go through that very sort of briefly, look through all of the individual pages. There's a few quite cool photos, and then there's some other sort of key bits of information that we've spotted, and I'm sure we've missed loads of other bits. So if you've got any other things that you've seen, please chat in the comments. And as I said, if anyone wants to come and chat in video form, then reach out to myself on Twitter or Facebook, or Andy Elvers or Josh Cunningham on Facebook or Twitter as well. So, and we'll get you on here. Everyone's welcome to join. It's just a light-hearted chat. So, Andy, how are you?
I'm fine.
Good. Awesome.
So I've only speed read it, but a couple of things did stand out to me, which I thought was quite interesting.
Should we go, Josh, do you mind popping on full screen the PDF, and we'll sort of go through there, and Andy can pull up his points, and I can do the same. And again, Josh and anyone in the comments as well, feel free to shout, wait a minute, that's a key bit of information, and that's important. So what were yours?
Well, the first bit I noticed was in the summary. They said near the end that the MS very soon. So on that page, right at the end, is the first deliveries of the Model. Yeah, on the previous page, first deliveries of the Model S will commence shortly.
Yeah,
which is good news. But my initial question to that is, well, what about the Model X? It's like those aerial sort of videos where people have flown drones over the factory, which I'm surprised no one's tried to shoot down, to be honest, because you must hear them buzzing over. But anyway, they clearly show quite a lot of Model S refresh have been built over the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks, and it's kind of interesting why they've not been delivered. So I thought that was very interesting. Also, on a later page, Berlin, they're now saying late 2021, which I thought was interesting because I've been reading on Twitter several people saying that they're running into permit issues in Berlin. And of course, anyone who's ever dealt with doing business in Germany, the red tape is horrendous over there. And I've certainly done that myself, and I always thought Berlin was an interesting choice for Tesla, knowing that they like to be really quick and the Germans like to be really slow. So I thought that was interesting. He also says later on that Tesla Vision, so FSD will go Tesla Vision in the US soon. And I thought, it may be soon or it's this year, but I thought that's another thing to watch out for as well. If that gets mentioned. I mean, obviously there's some controversy about that. But the thing that's also in there, which I thought interesting, is they talk about pivoting they're manufacturer of chips. So if you remember, a lot of car companies, I think Jaguar and Land Rover have stopped making cars because they've run out of chips. And Tesla are saying further down that they have pivoted to new suppliers to keep building cars, which could be a reason why we're not getting software updates if they're trying to cope with the new chips. So there's all sorts of little snippets in these texts if you sort of read it. And of course, Bitcoin is one of the reasons that their cash in hand is down, because they spend so much. That's one of the main reasons they're cash, because they put $1.5 billion into Bitcoin.
Yeah, and to bring that was on my next point actually. The one thing they have done, which I can't remember which paragraph it is, but they have sold $101 million worth of Bitcoin. So that's the first time that's been announced. So that's probably the biggest Bitcoin news, that Elon Musk is now a trader of Bitcoin as opposed to just a buyer. So yeah, they bought 1.33 billion roughly, and have now sold 100 million worth US dollars worth of Bitcoin. So that was that gave a positive.
How much profit though? That's the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously rough because we don't know the dates in which they bought exactly, but from the rough calculation, it was basically double. They basically doubled the Bitcoin balance, but obviously they don't show that in the accounts because it's not been realized yet. So it's very much just sort of waiting. But yeah, it's Bitcoin though, so it could easily drop by 60% tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, so that was the other sort of tidbit of information that was new, and yeah, some interesting stuff. So if anyone's got any comments, they've read through the PDF and have got anything that they think is important, interesting, then feel free to shout, and either in the comments, or if you want, as I said, to come up and speak on video, then, or even just audio, we can sort of hide your camera if you prefer. Then reach out to myself either on Facebook or Twitter, or Josh Cunningham or Andy Elvers, and we'll get you on here just to chat. And it's nothing sort of that important tonight. It's just sort of a relaxing chat from the club point of view. But if members
it's always interesting, these calls, isn't it? Because normally the articles for the next 3 or 4 days about Tesla are normally generated by these calls. So yeah. There'll be lots of things that come out, and it will be interesting to see, because sometimes people ask the right questions, and sometimes it kind of comes out a couple of days later when people really read what they've written here, and things come out of the woodwork, and people sort of realize. But yeah. Well, they just say Austin, I believe. They just say that it's on track. But Berlin is clearly later than they first expected.
Yeah. And going on to Nick's point, the regulatory credits are high. Yes, so the regulatory credits are still higher than net income, which, yeah, like you say, that will give the Bears some ammo for the next week. So that's definitely true. Yeah, so Josh, do you want to just go through... it's a bit difficult, actually, the small text stuff. So what might be worth us doing is just going to the pretty pictures, because pictures always sing us 1,000 words. Obviously, we've posted in the chat the link to the PDF, but for anyone that's just joining us, ir.tesla.com gives you the investor relations page, and you can join in that way. Now, we also have Paul Kelly as well joining us from Sunny Island. So I was listening to on Clubhouse and thought, why don't I reach out to Paul? Hey, Paul, how are you?
Good evening.
What's your first impressions of this lovely PDF?
Some really good stuff in here, right? We got very little about the new S, but they do say deliveries will start soon. Income looking pretty good. The EPS estimate was beat by, I think it was 84 was what the consensus was. They got 93. Obviously, that's non-GAAP, and non-GAAP means nothing to us Europeans. But basically, they go by the general accounting practices in the US, and non-GAAP is kind of like a more global kind of recognized way of accounting. And it's really just about how they account for specific things within their gross margin and profitability and all that kind of stuff. Automotive revenues Not bad. Obviously lower because the SNX mix was quite a bit lower than well, there was none really apart from the small. Excuse me. Somehow music is playing from my phone.
No worries. So
Weird.
briefly, whilst you're sorting that, we've got photos of Gigafactory Berlin there. The latest
Beautiful.
photo, which presumably in the last couple of days. What's the next image there, Josh? So big giga casting, which I think is the first time we've seen any of the like interior really of Berlin. Is that right?
I think so.
Yeah. Sorry, Paul, interrupting you.
No, you're fine. Everything looks good. To be fair, obviously free cash flow's down, say from Q4, but that's expected because they wrote down a load of debt, which I think is good use of their cash on hand. One thing to note, they did sell 101 million in Bitcoin in Q1. They obviously had originally bought 1.31 million and they sold 101 million of it. And obviously they made a profit on that, which we see on the P&L.
What I find slightly odd is that random amount. I mean, has anyone calculated whether that's an exact amount of Bitcoin, or if it's just if there was a particular reason why it would be $101 million worth of it? Seems an odd amount.
It does seem an odd amount. It could be something to do with there's some inflows from sales in Q1 with Bitcoin, and they just decided to sell off some of it to keep it as a nice round number.
I'm just Googling whether 420 Bitcoin equals. It doesn't know. That was my initial thought.
What about 420 times 69? What's that?
It'll be something crazy like that. It'll be some hidden joke or something.
Anyone bought a car yet with Bitcoin?
Sorry, say that again.
I wonder if anyone's bought a car yet with Bitcoin.
So I think there was an inference that there might have been the case.
Right.
I'm just looking.
We know someone who paid a deposit with Bitcoin anyway in the first couple of hours. Andre from the Tesla Universe Clubhouse admin. Andre, if you know, Josh and Will, you'd know him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he bought a Model Y using Bitcoin.
Oh, right.
So I just calculated that 420 Bitcoin times, what was it, times 6? What do we say? Times 9. Just trying to work it out.
69.
69, yeah. Christ, sorry. I'm just trying to see if there was any reference there.
420.
It's 28,000. That's too many.
Well, it's 50,000 a coin, isn't it?
That would be...
it's billions.
That's 1.1 billion. Yeah. So that just shows you the number. It's pretty crazy. So just going through the chat. If anyone's got any points of order that they've seen that's interesting, just shout. I say tonight's just a bit of a relaxing chat, and it wasn't anything really designed to be official. It's just sort of a chat, and if anyone's got any interesting things, tidbits of information, then feel free to put it in the chat or reach out on Facebook or Twitter, and we can put you on sort of stage, as it were, taking a bit out of a clubhouse, and put you on video as well, or just audio. So that's an option. Josh, can we go to the next slide on that, please? So the call should be live in 10 minutes? Do we think?
Yeah, 12. It's normally a little bit later.
The countdown's just below our logo at the minute, top right. So about 11 minutes. Yeah. Okay. That's live from Tesla. So.
Okay, great, perfect. So
Are you going to restream it here?
Yeah, so we're going to restream it here, and then just sort of chat in the background, probably on the chat, and then afterwards have a sort of 10-minute debrief of what just went on, and what we think the share price might do tomorrow. It's always bound to do something crazy.
It's flat in aftermarket anyway. So
yeah. And then the other thing was sort of they referenced the super low inventory, which we pretty much presumed anyway because of the lack of Model S and X being manufactured. Every one of them sold, so that was bound to happen.
Even the delivery number, like 185,000, they would have had to clear out inventory to do that. In fairness.
Yeah.
Big stamping press at Berlin. Doesn't look quite as big as the one at Fremont, but I don't know if that presumably is. Maybe it's just a camera angle. And Texas, looking.
That's going up, isn't it?
It is going up quick, almost as quick as Berlin. Berlin's was quite quick. Not quite. I think Shanghai still got the edge.
The record.
That was like next level. The way that just went up, sort of almost overnight. Yeah, Model Y. Looking at it, I think that's I mean, so many people are desperate for Model Y. I've just been looking at the size of it, interior storage wise, compared to everything else on the market. It's just like, apart from Model X, it's just nothing else comes close. It's perfect for.
Yeah, that was one of the disappointing things in that new Hyundai that everyone reviewed today.
Yeah. I think that
boot looked quite small.
Yeah, and it's a shame because that car looks pretty awesome.
It looks really awesome.
Yeah, from specs and little things like the way that the charge port obviously can be an exterior charging unit as well to do whatever you want to do, whether you want to charge a car or I think it was a.
And did you watch
Robert's inflatable bouncy castle? Did
you watch Robert's video? As you click left, you see the left camera going back in the side. I thought that was really cool. Yeah,
it's weird because they obviously with Model X, the pre-production model, they had those cameras, didn't they, on the instead of wing mirrors. And I don't know why Tesla never proceeded with that afterwards. Obviously, there was a bit of regulatory stuff which they were a bit confused about, presumably. But Audi e-tron have had it for how many? 2 years? I don't know why they never did that. It's a bit of a shame. So keep putting comments in the chat, and we'll ask. So there's one here. Does the Bitcoin purchase appear as an asset or cash or something else? How does that big purchase and the sale of 100 million affect the bottom line, since it's currency rather than plant or similar, but not dollars? Does anyone know the answer to that? Because I must admit, I don't know off the top of my head. But
bottom line is it's on the balance sheet, and the sale of it is straight to the P&L, like straight to the profit and loss. So it's 101 million of free cash, basically. So it's good.
Yeah, it's not bad for effectively doing nothing. They've not had to do much with it. Buy it and look after it for a little while and then sell it. Be interesting to see the fees, if they got fees. How many fees were charged on that purchase?
Yeah. So this picture suggests they're installing robots in Austin already.
Yeah, which is pretty massive news, isn't it? It's
so will the Y, because they're meant to be that the Y from Berlin is meant to have the new pressing and the new batteries. Is it the same in Austin? I assume that the Austin Y will be the same, right?
You would think so. They've learned for obviously building the Model Y in Fremont and then building it in Shanghai, and then obviously taking all of that knowledge, mistakes, success, and putting it into Berlin. And you would presume that most other companies would get Berlin up to scratch and say, yeah, this works. We're confident it works. Let's roll this out to Texas or the next place. But they've jumped the gun, haven't they? And they've said, well, actually, we've not even built a vehicle from Berlin, but we are presumably confident enough in that process, presumably based primarily off the Shanghai system, that it will work fine and the cars will be fine. So we'll just crack on and not hold back. Which
what does that mean for Fremont? Are they going to stop building Y in Fremont when they bring Texas online?
Don't think so. No, I don't think so. I think what will happen there is they'll slow down production and probably refit the line to use the front and rear castings there, and then they'll concentrate on the West Coast from that point and use Texas to the East Coast, and probably both will ship to Canada and other countries that, like say Taiwan. They take cars straight from Fremont, no changes. There's no homologation or anything like that. They just go straight into Taiwan in that market. So they'll still come out of Fremont. But obviously, once when Giga Texas is going full blast, say 250,000 Ys, that'll take the pressure off them and they can retool. I think ultimately Fremont is a hodgepodge, because, like Elon said, you can't change the wheels when you're going down the highway at 100 miles an hour or whatever. So you got to have production from elsewhere. And we were just discussing on Clubhouse before I jumped on there that like aspirationally the Y's TAM globally is 1.5 million units. Like that's a single vehicle line. So where are they going to produce those from? they're going to need at least another factory in order to do that. So and then there's the 3 is probably 500,000, and then the SNX like 100,000 or whatever. So, but I have a feeling the SNX demand is through the roof here, which I guess we'll see.
Oh yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people waiting for the update.
Yeah,
me included.
definitely. Yeah. Josh, could we go? Sorry to ask you just to keep sliding through. I mean, feel free to come on, Josh. You just sat in the background. I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. Model Y interior Model Y factory interior at Giga Texas. Again, looking. I mean, it's sad to say it looks sexy, but it makes me look like a complete Tesla geek, but
fanboy.
Yeah, fanboy. But I mean, it's just all the lot. It looks nice, So it's a good photo. Put it that way. So I've asked Lars to join. So let me just bring in Lars. Hey, Lars, how are you?
Hey, I'm fine. Thanks. How are you guys?
Yes, very good, very good. We just thought we'd do a non-official sort of a chat with a few sort of members tonight on this, and we thought, if anyone else is about and wants to join, then feel free. And so what are your thoughts on the PDF? Have you managed to go through it?
I just briefly looked through it, and I think there are some interesting things in it. I've not compiled all those numbers, but I mean, the fact that they want to start rolling out the semi this year looks good. The fact that they want to start production in Berlin a little bit later than expected. I think everybody who closely watches Giga 4 side was already expecting that, so that was not a surprise for me. But overall, I think I like what I saw.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
If Berlin is delayed, will they still launch the Y in Europe in the summer and bring them in from China?
I would probably yes, but I guess they will let people decide if they want to have the Chinese version or not, because I would say that at least people from Germany will tend to say, no, I wait for the German one. I don't want the Chinese one. But if they want to ship it to other countries in Europe, I'm pretty sure that people in other countries will say, yeah, as soon as I can have it, give it to me.
So on that point, they said we recently improved our domestic supply sourcing ratio to over 90%. Sorry, could I just get you to mute your microphone, Lars? I think I might be getting a feedback. So they're saying this is in Shanghai. We recently improved our domestic supply sourcing ratio to over 90%. Vehicle exports to Europe and APAC continue to progress as planned. Then the next section down, it says, in the meantime, we will continue to increase import volumes to Europe. This is whilst Giga Berlin is not available until at least late 2021. So to answer your point, I hope so. I hope that Giga Shanghai will suddenly be producing Model Ys, and for certainly the right-hand drive market for the UK would be great. And in my opinion,
but the Berlin Model Y should update. Oh, here we go.
So, looks like we've got a bit of a countdown now. Josh is going to put us on. So, just to be clear, this is audio only from their side of things. So what we might do, I think Josh can confirm, we might just play some of the YouTube content in the background. I don't know if that is the case, Josh. Josh is going to let us know. It's currently just music, classical music in the background, so there's no point us really playing that yet. But we will see what that is. So anything else, either Lars or Paul or Andy, that you've sort of seen from the deck that sort of springs out of interest? I think overall we're seeing sort of results that are pretty good. They could be worse. Q1 is generally bad. But I'm just getting someone else to join us. But any other thoughts?
I think the takeaway really is the gross margin stayed high even without the ZEV credits, without the SNX. And that was something a lot of people were waiting to see. What did the different mix of vehicles have an impact on the gross margin? And the simple answer was it had a very minimal impact, if any at all. So I think that bodes well for the future. The other thing to note is that their profit exceeds the amount of ZEV credits they got this quarter. So, the whole Tesla Q malarkey where they're kind of saying, they're only profitable because they're getting ZEV credits is nonsense. And I think we're finally at an inflection point, I think, for Tesla, where they can look like a big boy company. Yeah.
And Andy, any other thoughts?
No, I saw someone asking about the UK. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? In mainland Europe, they have launched the Model Y to order, and UK is conspicuous that they've not. But of course, we're right-hand drive, so we're always late to these models.
Well, yeah, and I think, to be honest, with the Model 3, excuse my French, cock up with those that had pre-ordered, certainly in the UK, it was a massive issue. I think slightly less so in the rest of Europe, but the fact that you had some people ordering a car on one day, and a week and a half later they would get delivery, and then you'd have people that had ordered 2.5 years prior getting the delivery on the same day was like, what the fuck? Again, excuse my French. So that's, I guess, the frustration with that. And I guess, from Tesla's side of things, well, why do we want to get all that frustration out? Why don't we just hold it until, weeks before, because we know there's demand there? I guess the problem from Tesla's point of view is that the people like myself will be we're so close to buying another car, at least in my case, as a second car, because the Model Y is the car I desperately want as a second car, that they will lose out on some sales. But, in the grand scheme of things, they're still going to sell out every quarter for probably the next 3 years minimum. So, we have Warren joining us, Warren White from the UK. I just joined him in. Hey, Warren, how are you? You're good. You're good. Did you manage to have a read of the PDF?
Indeed. Sorry, I just had a couple of microphone issues there.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. You're fine.
Excellent. Really interesting. I've just had a quick scoot through it while you were doing the introductions, and from my perspective, I was really fascinated to see some of the challenges they've got on ramping up their production, and some of the issues that could have in North America, particularly with the rapid continuation of Texas, but the question mark over Fremont that you were talking about a few minutes ago.
Yeah, perfect. Josh, can you just give us a quick update? Yeah, it's still music. Paul's saying it's still music. I didn't want us to be talking over Elon and then the comments going crazy. And I think, did we look through all of those fancy photos? I think we did. There's not a busting lot, was there?
We did. Sorry, Will. I'll interrupt you when it comes on. I've stayed on mute, so I'm listening in the background. So as soon as it goes live, I'll interrupt you and make the audio live. I've just taken it off for the minute because Stu's playing classical. So
fair enough. So record net income of is it 438 million? That's what I've just having a look now. Earnings of 93 cents per share on 10.13 billion in revenue. So not bad. I mean, they've had worse quarters.
Well, the revenue is up quarter over quarter, 75%. I think that's something to do a little jig about, to be honest with you. Like, think about it. You know what I mean? Q1's traditionally the weakest month and our weakest quarter, and it's been a bumper one from a deliveries perspective and a revenue perspective. Sure, it's down on Q4, but Q4 they sold 15,000 S's and X's, so it's hard to beat that.
Yeah, so Q1 adjusted earnings per share, it was 93 cents versus 80 cents expected. So that's, again, an increase in that, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
And yeah, so for those just joining, we should be going live any second now with the Tesla's Q1 2021 results. The PDF is already live, so for those that haven't seen it, it's ir.tesla.com. We've also put the link in the chat for the direct link to the PDF. There's sort of a 30-page PDF like they do every quarter that goes into all of the technical details, and it's pretty difficult for us to show on screen because it's lots of text and complicated graphs. But if you're into numbers and fancy a read, then that's sort of the place to go. But we were just sort of chatting sort of more generally about this update, some of the nice pictures of Berlin and Gigafactory Texas, and just sort of seeing how that's basically looking awesome. Apart from a bit of a delay with Giga Berlin, which we already sort of knew about. I mean, we knew I think probably a month ago that they were already about a month behind, 3 to 4 weeks behind at least. So it makes sense that that's heading towards the end of 2021. And I guess we're just going to have to cross fingers that further improvements between now and then take place to ensure that we get our lovely Model Ys into Europe and obviously into my driveway primarily.
Get rid of that Kona as quick as you can. Right?
Yeah, the Konas, bless it. I love the car, but it's needs to go.
Hasn't it been recalled?
Yeah, there was a battery recall on the Kona. Yeah, so I think all of the vehicles. Yeah. I don't know if there was a time period, but all of the current gen.
It's going to take them 3 years to replace all the batteries or something.
Yeah, not great. But to be fair to them, they've just said, "Well, we'll do it," and yeah. So
do you think the moral of the story is there? Drive it like you stole it. You're getting a new battery anyway.
Yeah, and also don't park it underneath your house or in a garage
or close to it.
Yeah. So Graham in the comments saying it's the first ever $1 billion quarter profit, which is pretty impressive. So were we expecting these numbers? Were we expecting it to be down?
No, they did too well.
They did too well. Yeah. I mean, you just had to. Sorry to Andy to interrupt. You just had to look at the number of vehicles coming into the UK on those boats and realise, they do seem to be doing pretty well.
Any idea? It's kind of interesting. Any idea that Tesla?
Okay, so we have got.
Only mode. After the presentation, there will be a question and answer session. Please be advised that today's conference is being recorded. If you require any further assistance, please press *0. I will now hand the conference over to your speaker today, Martin Vieca, Senior Director of Investor Relations.
Thank you, Carmen, and good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to Tesla's first quarter 2021 Q&A webcast. I'm joined today by Elon Musk, Zachary Kirkhorn, and a number of other executives. Our Q1 results were announced at about 1 p.m. Pacific time in the update deck we published at the same link as this webcast. During this call, we will discuss our business outlook and make forward-looking statements. These comments are based on our predictions and expectations as of today. Actual events or results could differ materially due to a number of risks and uncertainties, including those mentioned in our most recent filings with the SEC. During the question and answer portion of today's call, please limit yourself to one question and one follow-up. Please press *1 now if you would like to join the question queue. But before we jump into Q&A, Elon has some opening remarks. Elon?
Great, thank you. So Q1 2021 was a record quarter on many levels. Tesla achieved record production, deliveries, and surpassed $1 billion in non-GAAP net income for the first time. And we've seen a real shift in customer perception of electric vehicles, and our demand is the best we've ever seen. So this is, to be totally frank, we're used to seeing a reduction in demand in the first quarter, and we saw an increase in demand. That exceeded the normal seasonal reduction in demand in Q1. Model 3 became the best-selling mid-size premium sedan in the world. In fact, I should say the best-selling luxury sedan of any kind in the world. The BMW 3 Series was for the longest time the best-selling premium sedan. It's been exceeded by the Tesla Model 3. And this is only 3.5 years into production and with just 2 factories. For Model 3 to be outselling its combustion engine competitors, I think is quite remarkable. In the past couple of quarters, we delivered roughly 250,000 Model 3s, so which translates to an annualized rate of 500,000 per year. When it comes to Model Y, we think Model Y will be the best-selling car or vehicle of any kind in the world, and probably next year. So I'm not 100% certain next year, but I think it's quite likely. I'd say more likely than not that in 2022 Model Y is the best-selling car or truck of any kind in the world. Then with regard to full self-driving beta continues to make great progress. This is definitely one of the hardest technical problems that exists, that's maybe ever existed. And really, in order to solve it, we basically need to solve a pretty significant part of artificial intelligence, specifically real-world artificial intelligence. And that sort of AI, the neural nets need to be compressed into a fairly small computer, a very efficient computer that we've designed, but nonetheless, a small computer that's using on the order of 70 or 80 watts. So this is, I think, a much harder problem than if you were to use, say, 10,000 computers in a server room or something like that. This has got to fit into a smallish brain. And this, I think, with the elimination of radar, we're finally getting rid of one of the last crutches. Radar was really it was making up for some of the shortfalls of vision, but this is not good. You actually just need vision to work, and when vision works, it works better than the best human. Because it's like having 8 cameras. It's like having eyes in the back of your head, the sides of your head, and 3 eyes at different focal distances looking forward. This is, and processing it at a speed that is superhuman. There's no question in my mind that with a pure vision solution, we can make a car that is dramatically safer than the average person. So, but it is a hard problem because we are actually solving something quite fundamental about artificial intelligence. We basically have to solve real-world vision AI, and we are. So, and key to solving this is also having just a massive data set. So, just having well over 1 million cars on the road that are collecting data from very sort of corner case rare situations. Sort of like so many weird things in the world, like a truck carrying a truck, or a car with a one example is a car, an actual example, a car with a kayak on the roof, where the kayak has a little weight dangling from the front of the kayak in front of the car, and yet the car must ignore this and just look at the road. So it's really quite tricky, but I am highly confident that we will get this done. So yes, this quarter, and I think we'll continue to see that a little bit in Q2 and Q3. So Q1 had some of the most difficult supply chain challenges that we've ever experienced in the life of Tesla. Insane difficulties with supply chain, with parts over the whole range of parts. Obviously, people have heard about the chip shortage. This is a huge problem. But then, in addition to that, for example, we had quite a bit of difficulty scaling drive unit production in China because we were unable to get critical engineers there because of COVID quarantine restrictions. So, which meant that Tesla worldwide was dependent on drive units made at our factory in Nevada, Nevada. So that was a very challenging situation. I think we're mostly out of that particular problem. But those are just two of many challenges. So the team's really done an incredible job of dealing with really severe supply chain shortages. So let's see, with respect to the Model S and X, there were more challenges than expected in developing the Plaid Model S, or what's called the Palladium program, which is the new version of Model S and X, which has a revised interior and a new battery pack and new drive units and new internal electronics, and has, for example, a PlayStation 5 level infotainment system. There's just a lot of issues encountered. Ensuring that the new factory was, as we'll super say, was quite hard because we're packing more energy in a smaller space. So it took quite a bit of development to ensure that the battery of the new SX is safe. And we're trying to get all the details in the cars slowly for the past few months, but we're just stacking them up in the yard and just making refinements to the cars that we've built. But we do expect to ramp Model S production and start delivering them probably next month. And then to be in sort of fairly high volume production for the S in Q3, and to start delivering the Model X in Q3 as well. So I think as we ramp up, I think probably the demand for the new SX will be quite high. So it's really just going to be a question of ramping supply chain and internal production processes. So probably we're going to aim to produce over 2,000 SX per week. Perhaps, if we get lucky, upwards of 2,400 or 2,500. This again is contingent on global supply chain issues, which are just a lot of factors outside of our control here. But I do think these things will get sold, so it's just a matter of time, and then we'll be doing well over 2,000 SX per week. And it's a great car. It actually costs us less to produce, a little bit less to produce, but it is a superior product. So in conclusion, there's a lot to be excited about in 2021 and 2022. We're building factories as quickly as we can. Both Texas and Berlin are progressing well. We expect to have initial limited production from those factories this year, and volume production from Texas and Berlin next year. At the same time, we're continuing to ramp production of Model Y in Fremont and Shanghai. In the background, we're continuing development work on the Semi, Cybertruck, the Roadster, and other products. Thanks to everyone at Tesla who made this year a huge success. Now on to questions.
Thank you very much. We have some remarks from Zachary Kirkhorn as well.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Elon. So congratulations to the Tesla team on breaking multiple records in the first quarter of 21, as Elon had mentioned, which is typically the most difficult of the year for many reasons. To summarize the quarter, I think it's best understood by three key items. First, we successfully launched and began the ramp of Model Y in Shanghai, achieving positive gross margin in the first quarter of production and receiving a great reception from the market. Second, as Elon mentioned, although we began the production process for the Model S during the quarter, we had not yet begun customer deliveries. The reduction in Model S and X deliveries from Q4 to Q1 were a meaningful headwind to free cash flows and profit generation. For example, we incurred an estimated $200 million of direct P&L impact relating to this program in Q1, the majority of which is reflected in COGS, and that's before even considering the impact of lost revenue and profits as a result of the transition. And as Elon mentioned, we expect the first deliveries to begin shortly. Third, as we continue to work through the instability of the global supply chain, particularly around semiconductors and port capacities, while the Tesla team, in partnership with our suppliers, did tremendous work keeping our factories running, we did experience high expedite costs in the quarter, and they were also higher than they were in Q4, with some minor interruptions to production over the course of the quarter. But we believe that this landscape is improving, but it does remain difficult and it's an evolving situation. If we double-click within net income, auto gross margin, excluding credits, improved sequentially and year over year. This is in spite of the cost mentions for SNX and expedites and a reduction in global ASPs, as our cost structure as a company is reducing at an even faster pace. So as we look out over the course of the year, we feel optimistic about our gross margin strength, particularly as some of these headwinds we're experiencing start to be resolved. On services and other margins, these have recovered and are trending towards profitability, aided by strength in the used car business, operational improvements in service, and additional service revenue opportunities that help absorb fixed overheads. On energy gross margins, these remained negative for a second quarter. This is driven by solar roof-related ramp costs and winter seasonality in the lease PPA business. We continue to manage through a multi-quarter backlog on Powerwall. We're working as fast as we can to increase production, and this will aid in profitability of this business as those volumes increase. On operating expenses, these increased for Q1, which is driven by our investments in technology and growth. In particular for R&D, this includes the structural battery pack and 4680 cells, investments in the new SNX, and our neural net and silicon investments. On the SG&A side, we're setting up infrastructure and support for both China and EMEA in anticipation of volume to come there. And as I've said before, our plans show that we remain on track for sustained industry-leading operating margins. Double-clicking on cash flows, we continue to generate positive free cash flows, and this was despite the significant working capital headwinds from SNX. Additionally, we are making progress reducing various forms of debt. We also invested $1.5 billion in Bitcoin during the quarter, then trimmed our position by 10%, which contributed to a small gain in our Q1 financials. Taking a step back, we've generated $8 billion in operating cash flows and $4 billion in free cash flows over the past 4 quarters. As we look forward, our plans remain unchanged for long-term growth of 50% annually, and we believe we're on track to exceed that this year as we guided to last quarter. Global demand remains meaningfully higher than production levels, and so we're driving as fast as we can to increase our production rates. As we think about Q2 and Q3, these quarters should largely be driven by execution on SNX, as we've discussed, continued ramp of Model Y in Shanghai, and the associated cost reductions of these programs. And we expect profitability and cash generation to evolve over the course of the year in line with those improvements. And then as we get towards the end of the year, our story will pivot towards the launch and ramp of our newest factories in Austin and Berlin. So there's certainly no shortage of exciting things for us to work on and look forward to. Thank you, and we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you very much. And we'll first take retail questions from Say website. The first question is, how is Dojo coming along? Could Dojo unlock an AWS-like business line for Tesla over the next few years?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So, with respect to Dojo...
Actually, sorry, that guy, my apologies, I was on mute.
Oh, go ahead, Elon.
I was just basically saying that although like right now people think of Tesla as, a lot of people think Tesla is a car company or perhaps an energy company, I think long term people will think of Tesla as much as an AI robotics company as we are a car company or an energy company. I think we are developing one of the strongest hardware and software AI teams in the world. Certainly, we appear to be able to do things with full self-driving that others cannot. So, and if you look at the evolution of what technologies we developed them in order to solve the problem of self-driving. So we couldn't find a powerful enough neural net inference computer, so we designed and built our own. The software out there was really quite primitive for this task, and so we built a team from scratch and have been developing what we think is probably the most advanced real-world AI in the world. And then it sort of makes sense that this is kind of what needs to happen, because the road system is designed for a neural net computer, our brain. Our brain is a neural net computer. And it's designed, the entire road system is designed for vision with a neural net computer, which is because it's designed for eyes in a brain. And so if you have a system which has very good eyes, you can see in all directions at once, you can see 3 focal points ahead, forward, but it never gets tired. It's never sort of texting. It has redundancy, and its reaction time is superhuman. Then it seems pretty obvious that such a system would achieve an extremely high level of safety, far in excess of the average person. So that's what we're doing. Then Dojo is kind of the training part of that. So because we have over 1 million cars, and perhaps next year we'll have 2 million cars in active use, providing vast amounts of video training data that then needs to be digested by a very powerful training system. And currently, we use it's Tesla training software. So we developed a lot of training software, a lot of labeling software to be able to do surround video labeling, which is quite tricky. This means all 8 cameras simultaneously at 36 frames a second per camera, labeling video over time. There wasn't any tool that existed for this, so we developed our own labeling tool. Then taking it a step further, obviously the holy grail is auto labeling. So now we're getting quite good at auto labeling, where the trainers train the training system, and then the system auto labels the data, and then the human labelers just need to look at the labeling to confirm that it is correct and perhaps make edits. And then every time an edit is made, that further trains the system. So it's kind of like a flywheel that's just sort of spinning up. And really the only way to do this is with vast amounts of video data. So then we need to train this efficiently. So Dojo is really it is a supercomputer optimized for neural net training. We think Dojo will be probably an order of magnitude more efficient on say, I'm not sure what the exact right metric is, but say per frame of video, we think it'll be an order of magnitude more cost efficient in hardware and in energy usage per frame of video compared to a GPU-based solution, or compared to the next best solution that we're aware of. So then possibly that could be used by others. It does seem as though over time, I mean, just an observation, I think basically just a fact, that neural net-based computing or AI-based computing is more and more of the compute stack. conventional computing, perhaps heuristics based computing is still going to be important, still going to be very important, but it will become, but neural net will become a bigger and bigger portion of compute. So anyway, that was a long story, but I think, yeah, probably others will want to use it too, and we'll make it available.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the second question from retail investors. The recent price changes on solar roof have been discouraging for customers and investors. Could Tesla share more about solar roof challenges and if the outlook has changed at all, i.e. 1,000 roofs per week?
Yeah, first of all, I should say that the demand for the solar roof remains strong. So despite raising the price, the demand is still significantly in excess of our ability to meet the demand to install the solar roofs. So production is going fine, but we are choked at the installation point. We did find that we basically made some significant mistakes in assessing the difficulty of certain roofs. But the complexity of roofs varies dramatically. Some roofs can be literally 2 or 3 times easier than other roofs. So you just can't have a one-size-fits-all situation. If a roof has a lot of protuberances, or if the roof the core structure of the roof is rotted out or is not strong enough to hold the solar roof, then the costs can be double, sometimes 3 times what our initial quotes were. So in those cases, what we've obviously offered to do is to refund customers their deposit, but what we cannot do is go and just lose a massive amount of money. We just got to provide a refund of the deposit. But perhaps what is I think most important about the solar roof situation, which I tweeted about this past week, is that we're shifting the whole sort of solar situation, so the solar Powerwall, basically solar plus battery situation, to there's only one product, basically, or there's only one configuration. Every house, we will not sell a house solar without a Powerwall. That solar could either be solar retrofit, with conventional panels put on a roof, or it can be the Tesla solar glass roof. But in all cases, it will have the Powerwall 2. Technically, it's actually Powerwall 2 Plus, if you will. The Plus refers to a higher peak power capability. So basically, all Powerwalls made since roughly November of last year have a lot more peak power capability than the specification on the website. They have about twice the power capability, roughly. It depends on how you count power, but about twice the peak power, and about arguably twice the steady state power of the specification on the website. The energy is the same, but the power is roughly double. And all installations will have the Powerwall, and the difficulty of the installation will dramatically increase, or the difficulty of the installation will be much less. It'll be much easier because the power from the solar glass roof, or the solar panels will only ever go directly into the Powerwall, and the Powerwall will only ever go between the utility mains, between the utility and the main power panel of the house, which means you never need to touch the main circuit breakers of the house. You never need to touch the house circuit breakers. Effectively, almost every house therefore looks the same electrically, instead of being a unique work of art and requiring exceptional ability to rewire the main panel. So this is extremely important for scalability. It's the only way to do it, really. And this also means that every solar Powerwall installation, that the house or apartment, whatever the case may be, will be its own utility. And so even if all the lights go out in the neighborhood, you will still have power. So that gives people energy security. And we can also, in working with the utilities, use the Powerwalls to stabilize the overall grid. So let's say that there's like there was in Texas, there was a peak power demand, and that peak power demand, because the grid lacked the ability to buffer the power, they had to shut down power. There's no power storage, no good form of power storage. However, with a whole bunch of Powerwalls at houses, we can actually buffer the power. So if the grid needs more power, we can actually then, with the consent, obviously, of the homeowner and in partnership with the utility, we can then actually release power onto the grid to take care of peak power demands. So effectively, the Powerwalls can operate as a giant distributed utility. This is profound. I'm not sure how many people will actually understand this, but this is extremely profound and necessary, because we are headed towards a world where, as we were just talking about earlier, where people are moving towards electric vehicles. This will mean that the power needs at homes and businesses will increase significantly. There will need to be a bunch more electricity coming somewhere. In fact, if you go full renewable electricity, we need about 3 times as much electricity as we currently have. So these are rough numbers, but you roughly need twice as much electricity if all transport goes electric, and then you need 3 times as much electricity if all heating goes electric. So basically, this is a prosperous future, I think, both for Tesla and for the utilities. Because, and in fact, I think this will be very, if this is not done, the utilities will fail to serve their customers. They won't be able to do it. They won't be able to react fast enough. And we're going to see more and more of what we see in California and Texas, of people seeing brownouts and blackouts, and the utilities not being able to respond because there's a massive change going on with the transition to electric transport, and we're seeing more extreme weather events. This is a recipe for disaster. So it is very important to have solar and batteries at the local level at the house. In addition, it is important to have large battery storage at the utility level, so that solar and wind, which are the main forms of renewable electricity, that electricity can be stored, because sometimes the wind doesn't blow, sometimes it blows a lot, sometimes it blows too much, and sometimes it doesn't blow enough. But if you have a battery, you can store the energy and provide the energy to the grid as needed. The same goes for solar, because obviously the sun does not shine at night, and sometimes it is very cloudy. And so by having battery storage paired with solar and wind, this is the long-term solution to a sustainable energy future. And as I said, this really needs to occur both at the local level and at the utility level. If it doesn't occur at the local level, what will actually be required is a massive increase in power lines, in power plants. So they have to put long distance and local power lines all over the place. They'll have to increase the size of the substations. It's a nightmare. This must occur. There must be solar plus battery. It's the only way. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. And the next retail question is, Master of Coin, can you tell us anything about Tesla's future plans in digital currency space, or when any such major developments might be revealed?
Sure. Thanks, Martin. So as I noted in our opening remarks, and we've announced previously, so Tesla did invest $1.5 billion into Bitcoin in Q1, and then we subsequently sold a 10% stake in that. We also allow customers to make vehicle deposits and final vehicle purchases using Bitcoin. And so where our Bitcoin story began, maybe just to share a little of the context here, Elon and I were looking for a place to store cash that wasn't being immediately used, try to get some level of return on this, but also preserve liquidity. Particularly as we look forward to the launch of Austin and Berlin and uncertainty that's happening with semiconductors and port capacity, being able to access our cash very quickly is super important to us right now. And, there aren't many traditional opportunities to do this, or at least that we found and in talking to others that we could get good feedback on, particularly with yields being so low and without taking on additional risk or sacrificing liquidity. And Bitcoin seemed at the time, and so far has proven to be a good decision, a good place to place some of our cash that's not immediately being used for daily operations or maybe not needed till the end of the year, and be able to get some return on that. And, I think one of the key points that I want to make about our experiences in the digital currency space is that there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic here. We're certainly watching it very closely at Tesla, watching how the market develops, listening to what our customers are saying. But, thinking about it from a corporate treasury perspective, we've been quite pleased with how much liquidity there is in the Bitcoin market. So our ability to build our first position happened very quickly. When we did the sale later in March, we also were able to execute on that very quickly. And so as we think about kind of global liquidity for the business and risk management, being able to get cash in and out of the markets is something that I think is exceptionally important for us. So we do believe long-term in the value of Bitcoin, so it is our intent to hold what we have long-term and continue to accumulate Bitcoin from transactions from our customers as they purchase vehicles. Specifically with respect to things we may do, there are things that we're constantly discussing. We're not planning to make any announcements here, and we're watching this space closely. So when we're ready to make an announcement on this front, if there's one to come, we'll certainly let you all know.
Thank you. And the fourth question from retail investors is, does Tesla have any proactive plans to tackle mainstream media's imminent, massive, and deceptive clickbait headline campaigns on safety of autopilot or FSD? Perhaps specialty PR job of some sort?
I'll take this one, guys. From the safety side, I continue to say as Elon, that safety is a driving point and all. Go ahead, Elon.
I think please go ahead. I think it's much worth just going through the facts of the specifically there was an article regarding a tragedy where there was a high-speed accident in Tesla that and there was really just extremely deceptive media practices where it was claimed to be autopilot, where this is completely false. And those journalists should be ashamed of themselves. Please go ahead, Lars.
Yeah, thanks, Elon. So I was just saying we're committed to safety in all our designs, and that's number one in what we do here. Regarding the crash in Houston specifically, we work directly with the local authorities, NTSB and NHTSA, wherever applicable, and whenever they reach out to us for help, directly on the engineering level and whatever else we can support. In that vein, we did a study with them over the past week to understand what happened in that particular crash, and what we've learned from that effort was that autosteer did not and could not engage on the road condition that as it was designed. Our adaptive cruise control only engaged when a driver was buckled and above 5 miles per hour, and it only accelerated to 30 miles per hour over the distance before the car crashed. As well, adaptive cruise control disengaged the car slowly to complete to a stop when the driver's seatbelt was unbuckled. Through further investigation of the vehicle and accident remains, We inspected the car with NTSB and NHTSA and the local police, and we were able to find that the steering wheel was indeed deformed, so leading to the likelihood that someone was in the driver's seat at the time of the crash, and all seatbelts post-crash were found to be unbuckled. We were unable to recover the data from the SD card at the time of impact, but the local authorities are working on doing that, and we await their report. As I said, we continue to hold safety in a high regard and look to improve our products in the future through this kind of data and other information from the field.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go to the next question from institutional investors. The first question is, proponents of alternative grid storage technologies claim that lithium-ion is unsuited for long-term storage at scale due to vampire drain. Could 4680 cells address this limitation? Is the limitation even relevant for charging the energy equation?
Yeah, just let me jump in on the vampire drain. That's definitely not the issue. A good lithium-ion cell self-discharges less than 0.001% of its energy per day. So it has, this vampire drain is maybe a non-sequitur. No. Yeah.
As mythical as vampires.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the challenge with seasonal storage is your value proposition drops from hundreds of useful full cycles per year to less than maybe 10 or maybe even less than 5 cycles per year. So it's just a different type of technology, altogether that would make sense, given that it's more than an order of magnitude different use case.
Yeah. I mean, we've got a long way to go before we're dealing with seasonal technology issues. But certainly a way to deal with seasonal technology would be to have wind and solar growing on the side of more southerly latitudes, but then across a variety of longitudes. So essentially, like let's say in the U.S., for example, if there was, I'm not sure if you'll understand this, you can actually power the entire United States with just sort of roughly a 100-mile by 100-mile grid of solar. Sometimes people don't quite understand, like, well, how much solar is needed to power the United States? Almost nothing of the United States required to power the United States. And this is true of almost any country in the world. The solar incidence is a gigawatt per square kilometer. This is insane. In fact, if you took the clear area, just the area, for nuclear power plants, the area that is considered not usable because a nuclear power plant is there, in most cases, if you just put solar there, it would generate more power than the nuclear power plant. This is because they typically have pretty wide clear areas. If you have, say, 25% efficient solar panels, and then those are 80% efficient in how they're laid out, you're going to do about 200 megawatts per square kilometer. Therefore, 5 square kilometers is a gigawatt, which might be a typical sort of power plant. It's really not much area at all, and a lot of places can have wind and solar in the same place. So, anyway, it's entirely possible to power all of Earth with a small percentage of Earth's area, and then to transmit that power through high voltage DC lines. No new technology. No. You don't need room temperature superconductors. This is also another myth. Room temperature superconductors, almost irrelevant in my opinion. Almost irrelevant. Low cost, long distance power lines using copper or aluminum, very important. So heating is I squared R. So that's current squared times resistance. So as you increase voltage, you can drop the current dramatically, and drop the heating dramatically to the point where it is of minor relevance. Like maybe you lose 5 to 7% with a high voltage DC power line, something like that. So I want to be clear, no physics is necessary, no new materials is necessary. We just need to scale this thing up. We have the technologies exist today to solve renewable energy. And sometimes people say, well, why don't we do it? That's because the energy basis of the Earth is gigantic, super mega insanely gigantic. So you can't just go and do a zillion terawatts overnight. You've got to build the production capacity for the cells, for the battery cells, for the solar cells. You've got to put that into vehicles. You've got to put that into stationary storage packs. You've got to put that into solar panels and solar glass roofs, and you've got to deploy all this stuff. But it is certainly the case that we can accelerate this, and we should try to accelerate it. The right thing to do, I think, from an economic standpoint, and I think almost any economist would agree, is to have a carbon tax, just as we have a tax on cigarettes and alcohol, which we think are more likely to be bad than good, and we tend to tax fruit and vegetables less. Well, the same should be true. We should tax energy that we think is probably bad, and support energy we think is probably good, just like cigarettes and alcohol versus fruits and vegetables. It's just common sense. But I guess on the plus side, I'm not suggesting anyone be complacent, but sustainable energy, renewable energy will be solved. It is being solved, but it matters how fast we solve it. And if we solve it faster, that's better for the world.
Thank you very much.
There's no question in my mind whatsoever that the energy storage problem can be solved with lithium-ion batteries. Zero. I want to be clear. Zero. I think the bias will tend to be towards iron-based lithium-ion cells. When people say lithium-ion, people think lithium must be a big constituent of the cells. It's more like 1 to 2% of the cell is lithium. The main part of the cell is the cathode. The main mass and cost in the cell is the cathode. For high energy cells, like for example, what we use in most Teslas have nickel-based lithium-ion cells, which have higher energy density, longer range than iron-based cells. However, for stationary storage, the energy density is not as important because it's just sitting on the ground. And so I think the vast majority of stationary storage will be iron-based lithium-ion cells with an iron phosphate cathode, technically. But I think the phosphate part is unnecessary. It's really just iron or nickel. Unnecessary in the terminology. Just think of it as iron and nickel. And there's an insane amount of iron in the world. More iron than we could possibly use. And there's also more lithium than we could possibly use. Basically, there is no shortage of anything whatsoever in iron phosphate lithium-ion cells.
Thank you very much. Let's go to the next question from institutional investors, which is, you've suggested that between a 5x to 10x improvement is achievable in the automotive production versus the first Model 3 line on the first principles physics analysis. Where does Berlin sit? Where does Berlin sit relative to that limit?
Oh, I think we're still quite far away from it. I mean, the thing to bear in mind with production is, for those who've never done production, they just don't understand how insanely hard production is. I want to really be very, very emphatic here. Prototypes are trivial. They're child's play. Production is hard. It is very hard. Now you say production at large scale with high reliability and low cost, insanely difficult. But what Tesla achieved on the automotive side was not to create an electric car. The truly profound thing on the car side is that Tesla was the first American car company to achieve volume production of a car in 100 years and not go bankrupt. So this I basically, myself and many others at Tesla had to basically have several aneurysms to get this done. It was so hard. You have no idea. So anyway, and the thing about making a large, complex manufactured object is, let's say you have first order approximation, 10,000 unique items. If even one of those items is slow, that sets your weight. Just one. Doesn't matter how, it can be so trivial. We've had production stop because of carpet in the trunk. We had production stop because of a USB cable. At one point for the Model S, we literally raided every electronics store in the Bay Area. For a few days there, nobody could buy a USB cable in the Bay Area because we went and bought them all to put them in the car. Literally. And there's like hundreds of stories like that. So anyway, that's the solving those constraints and a logistics problem that makes World War II look trivial. I'm not kidding. Like, the scale is insane. We're talking millions of cars, massive global supply chain, 50 countries, dozens of regulatory regimes. It's insane. So, yeah.
Thank you. And the last question from institutional investor is, Master Plan Part 2 talks about an urban transport vehicle that is smaller than traditional bus with greater aerial density achieved by removing the central aisle. Do you have any updates to share on this goal?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move to analyst Q&A.
Thank you. First question is from Pierre Ferrago with New Street Research. Your line is open.
Hi, guys. Thanks a lot for taking my question. I'd love to get actually an update on what you presented on the battery day. In the last 6-7 months, I was wondering how much progress you've made on that front. First, in terms of process development, so how are things coming together on your pilot line? Are you getting to the kind of production throughput you were aiming for? And second, actually on your production ramp, so I was wondering in which sites you're ramping production capacity for the 4680 cell and where you stand on ramping up that capacity as well. And I'll have a quick follow-up on energy as well, if that's possible.
Well, so we have and Drew closely add to this, but we have a small sort of pilot plant, which is still big by normal standards, expected to have like a 10 gigawatt hour per year capability in Fremont, California. And we've made quite a few cells. We're not quite yet at the point where we think the cells are reliable enough to be shipped in cars, but we're getting close to that point. And then we've already ordered most of the equipment for battery production in Berlin, and then much of it for Austin as well. So we're really down to like the nitty-gritty elements. But overall, I think we're still feel quite optimistic about this achieving volume production of the 4680 next year.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Yeah, thanks. Just one thing I would add is there's been a lot of questions about yields. Actually, I noticed people asking about that, and the yield progress has been really strong every day. When we were really still in commissioning phase with most of the tools, to the point where we're confident that the yield trajectory aligns with our internal cost projections. We did talk about yield also at Battery Day, which is one of the reasons why it's useful to check in on that. It takes a while, as Elon just mentioned, to go from prototype to production, and it's not just parts, it's processes, it's equipment. But as we've matured those pieces of the process equipment, we've gotten to where we need to be on the yield side.
Yeah, and basically, this is just a guess because we don't know for sure, but it appears as though we're about 12, but probably not more than 18 months away from volume production of the 4680. Now, at the same time, we are actually trying to have our cell supply partners ramp up their supply as much as possible. So this is not something that is to the exclusion of suppliers. It is in conjunction with suppliers. So
yeah,
we want to be super clear about that. This is not about replacing suppliers. It is about supplementing the suppliers. So we have a very strong partnership with CATL, with Panasonic, and LG. And our request to our strategic partners for cell supply is please supply us with as much as you possibly can. Provided the price is affordable, we will buy everything that they can make.
Yeah, and specific to that, we're on track to more than double the supplier capacity over the next 13.
Yeah, exactly. We do expect from suppliers willing to receive double the cell output next year versus this year.
Yep.
Okay. And I had a quick follow-up on maybe Zach for you on your energy business. So I understand like the negative gross margin with solar roof RAM, but I was wondering, what do gross margin look like there when you look at the storage business, and what's your ambition in terms of gross margin in that business? As I guess it's going to grow in the mix in coming years. So it's important for long-term modeling.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of.
We're aiming for comparable margins in storage as in vehicle, but it is important to bear in mind that vehicle is more mature than storage. So we already are at good margins with the Powerwall, but some additional work is needed for the Mega Pack to achieve good margins. Yeah, Drew, what do you think?
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, just jumping in, Elon. Absolutely agree. Yeah, Powerwall is mature. We've been producing Powerwall 2 for 3 years now, and we're at good margins there. But Megapack has more room to go to achieve our targets.
So we have a clear runway for improving the cost per the megawatt hour of the Megapack.
Absolutely, yes, we do.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question, please.
From Rod Lackey with Wolfe Research, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. I was hoping maybe just first you could talk a little bit about how you're thinking about the rollout of version 9 of FSD and the transition to the subscription model. It sounds like some of this is about to roll out next month. I'm not sure if that's the subscription model, but maybe you could just spend a little time talking about how impactful you expect that to be.
Sorry, go ahead, guys.
Yeah, we're working on getting FSD subscription out. There's a couple of internal technical dependencies, but from a business model perspective, that's aligned, and we're hoping to roll that out soon. The key thing that I say here, there's a lot of potential for recurring revenue based on an FSD subscription. If you look at the size of our fleet and you look at the number of customers who did not purchase FSD up front or on a lease and maybe want to experiment with FSD, this is a great option for them. One of the things we'll need to keep an eye on is a potential transition from cash purchases of FSD subscription over to, or cash purchases of FSD who may move over to FSD subscription. And so there could be a period of time in which, cash reduces in the near term, and then as the portfolio of subscription customers builds up, then that becomes a pretty strong business for us over time. But we're hoping to get this launched pretty soon and see what the response is to it.
Okay, great. And was hoping, Zach, maybe you could just talk a little bit about Opex. There was a noticeable increase, even excluding SBC. Obviously, a lot going on this quarter, but can you maybe just talk a little bit about how we should be thinking about that going forward?
Sure. On the R&D side, what we're seeing, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, is kind of a convergence of a series of programs that are happening. And our R&D Opex spend kind of correlates to where we are in the product life cycle on different programs. And so we're kind of at the tail end of investments in what we call internally Palladium, which is the new Model S and Model X. And so we expect that to decrease over time, but it was high in Q1 for a lot of the reasons that Elon had mentioned. We're also getting very heavy into 4680 development that Drew and team are working on, and the associated structural battery pack that goes along with that. And so these are new technologies, not only new to Tesla, but new to the industry. And so we're investing heavily there on an R&D side to work out those kinks. And, spend along in those areas, should continue over time as we continue to work through the development cycle of those. And then I also mentioned, Elon talked a bit about, Dojo and the potential there. So from neural net investments and custom silicon investments, these continue to be areas that we spend on and make investments in. On the SG&A side, the business is pivoting very quickly to be global, and China is ramping quite quickly. And we're trying to make sure that we are staying ahead of the volume so that we have the right sales capacity, store capacity there, local investments in IT and others to manage the growth, such that as the growth comes, the execution challenges are smaller than maybe in similar periods of growth that we've seen in the past. And so we're making investments there ahead of the growth. And overall, as we look at Opex as a percentage of revenue over the course of the year, we do expect to see a substantial drop from 2020 to 2021 as the volumes in the latter part of the year pick up.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question, please.
Thank you. From Dan Levy with Credit Suisse. Your line is open.
Hi. Good evening. Thanks. Two questions. One is on COGS. I think we've gotten from Battery Day a pretty good feel about the potential for COGS reduction related to powertrain, but I'd like to get a sense of the path to reducing COGS X powertrain. As you'd still need a meaningful reduction on that front to make the math work on a $25,000 vehicle. So what levers do you have to reducing your cost X powertrain? Is it just more scale, better supplier pricing, or is it just based on ongoing cost reductions?
Sure. I think all of the above.
Yeah, on the vehicle side, there's plenty of opportunity as well. Obviously, building a car like a Model S is quite complex and has various moving parts. Model 3 and Model Y were steps of improvement in that. But when you look at some of the other advancements that we're including in the Model Y factories into Austin and Berlin, we've reduced the body part count by as much as 60%, and the part costs money. So we continue to find optimizations there, as well as we get economies of scale when we start to talk about the volumes we're considering worldwide with 4 factories building the same vehicle. So both of those things on the vehicle side will improve our COGS as well, and the powertrain continues to be integrated into that.
Great. And then just related, as we see Berlin and Austin ramp, I'd like to just get a sense on the comparison of Fremont versus the new capacity. Obviously, Fremont non-optimized because you bought, the old NUMMI facility. You had to retrofit that to your needs. So maybe you can give us a sense of how your new capacity is going to differ versus Fremont. what are the areas that you have efficiencies that you previously didn't have, and maybe, you know, how much does that add up to improved COGS over time to help you achieve that $25,000 vehicle?
Yeah, I don't think we don't want to talk too much about future product development. The earnings calls are not the right place for to make major product announcements. So yeah, we'll get there, but we'll talk about it later.
All right. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today. Thank you very much for dialing in and for listening, and we'll speak to you again in about 3 months. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
This concludes today's conference call. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.
So, what do we think of that, everybody?
Lots to digest there, right?
Yeah, there was quite a lot to digest, and I think there was a lot of actual just discussing previous points that we already knew, and yeah, I think a lot to digest. So I wrote quite a few notes. Just thought we'd briefly touch on some of those if anyone had any sort of dying comments on them. Again, we're just sort of chatting for those watching in the background, nothing formal, just sort of a light chat. So if anyone's got any comments about what we've just heard, then feel free to put them in the chat, and we will discuss. And if anyone wants to join us on stage, then feel free to shout, and we can get you on board. James Locke is also here. Hello, James. So 2021, most popular vehicle, they're planning Model Y. Presumably fairly obvious that was going to happen. But they have had major parts issues, which, again, we sort of understood. Any thoughts on those? Anyone? Let us know. But I guess the first bit of big information was that they are planning for 2,000 S and X per week, with a potential for upwards of 2,500, which, from my understanding, Paul, is an increase. Is that right?
Yeah. Like they said, the installed production is 100,000 vehicles. So if it's 2,500, it's 130,000. Like that is, we're talking billions of dollars of additional revenue. So that's pretty impressive if they can get to that production rate.
So I'm trying to get everyone on the screen at the same time. Yeah. So it was what did you say? 1,500 previously before the.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they were producing around 16, or I think 18,000 a quarter, selling roughly 16,000 if you average it out over the last 4 quarters. Brings us to 1,500-ish.
It is interesting to know, though, they only made the 100,000 back in 2017. They've never actually hit their production target since then.
Yeah.
So if there is a sufficient pent-up demand, because they only sold 54,000 S and X last year, is there really that much pent-up demand for the new model?
I think so.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because Elon's already previously said that they were really just keeping certainly S, maybe slightly less so X, just on for nostalgia. I wonder how that has changed in the last 12 months, if they've seen an increase in the number of people sort of desperately wanting a new Model S and Model X. That'd be interesting to see once production is at that level, whether they actually go, shit, we've got this production level, but we haven't got the sales anymore. I can't personally believe it, because you would think that there's always going to be enough demand. Those people that were contemplating a Model 3 or Model Y that can't get one, maybe they're going to jump to S and X. But any thoughts, James, overall?
I mean, I'm personally excited about the S and X. I've been waiting for a game console in the back for the kids, or just for a robotaxi. I mean, that has a huge limo type service capability to it as well. So excited to see where that goes in the future.
And so they obviously reference the most difficult quarter of the year, which we've always known Q1 is generally bad for that. But production still seems to be good, and demand overall is high compared to the production levels that they can produce. Obviously, sort of excluding S and X at the moment, although there obviously is that demand in the background, but just no one can buy one. Dojo supercomputer. Any thoughts? Optimized obviously for the neural net training. Per frame of video seems to be far better than anything else on the market. Any thoughts on that? Any of you? Warren, put you on the spot.
I think I must have been making my cup of tea during most of that section, to be honest. But yeah, the bit I did catch, it was interesting, but I'm still not convinced yet. There's so much talk about it, but actually trying to understand what will hit the streets is very tricky.
And James, your thoughts as a full self-drive?
Specifically around Dojo, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that once we get more details of what exactly that entails, and I mean, he let a little bit out about how the human trainers are just validating the data validating the data from the Dojo computer. So I can see how that will escalate the self-driving system and helping it learn quicker. For example, with the current revision, we're on 8.2 of FSD beta. We are seeing changes. I'm definitely seeing changes in the behavior of full self-driving without updates. So that labeling data has to be coming down to our cars, and it's influencing the way the car drives. So it'll be interesting to see as that ramps up, how quickly the system's able to learn and adapt to new situations.
And Paul, we currently have 1 million cars, supposedly, on the road learning from everyone. Do we think next year they'll be able to hit the 2 million that they referenced?
As in total on the road? I think so. Yeah, we're on track to hit 1 million cars this year. Now the thing is how many people are paying for FSD? We know that hardware and software is in the cars, whether you pay for it or not. But yeah, I don't know. They'll have the cars. I'm sure of that. They'll have at least 750,000 this year, so if not 1 million.
And they obviously referenced the full self-drive subscription, which we've obviously known for a while is coming. And there was basically no news on that, although there was obviously the reference that a lot of revenue could come from that. There was a comment though that I didn't quite catch to the discussion of those that had already paid for full self-drive up front, and the moving of those to a subscription model. Now we know that that's not going to happen, but they did reference something, and I didn't quite catch it. Did anyone catch the wording that they used? No.
No.
Yeah. Have to rewind and find that.
Yeah.
I think there was probably a point about the challenges of subscription accounting, that you're putting a lot of investment in your product, but you're not getting the money back until several years later. So I know certainly in previous businesses I've had, it really does alter your financial forecasting, because you're waiting for several years for that income to come in.
Yeah. First time we've heard Elon's child in the background. That was the first. Elon's clearly working from home, and 2020 of you're on mute didn't go through to him, so a bit of catching up there, which I thought was quite funny, and just to prove that he is still human, and even he can't work out if you're on mute or not. So that, yeah, Elon, you're on mute, which I thought was quite funny. So demand for solar roof still in excess of installation, and again, the only real tidbit of information really that was new was that the Powerwall for the solar tiles, you had to have a Powerwall alongside it, which I don't know if that's really that groundbreaking information. There was obviously quite a focus, I think, on US. Warren, you referenced that. Was there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the way Elon was talking about battery grid reinforcement felt, pretty old hat for the UK. We've been doing it at a small scale for several years, and I'm trying to think how big the one that was announced last November around London, which I think was about 340 megawatts or something ridiculous. So I think there are other companies doing for pretty big scale stuff in Europe. Perhaps as a very specific thing that they're not doing it yet.
And Andy, any thoughts on Powerwall solar tiles? Oh, we have you muted. Say again, Andy.
You can hear me now.
Yes, can hear you.
I thought I was muted. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wonder if they're just linking it together to make more profit while they're limited in production. But he did go off on this fancy idea about how they all have to be linked, and he had decided this was it. But call me slightly cynical, I think it's about making as much money out of what you can produce, which, you know, is a good capitalist thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a lot of business potential there for Tesla to put everyone in the same tank effectively, and push out that energy when the market needs it. So yeah, it makes sense.
I think there's another factor. Having just went through this last year with Tesla Energy, we got the solar panels and 4 Powerwalls. When they did that, and it really, one thing they had to do was they had to completely rewire our main breaker panel for the way the system was set up previously. And the way Elon was describing it, that would no longer be required, thereby reducing the complexity of install, reducing the permitting process, and making it a more efficient and probably a little less expensive process when you include the Powerwalls as part of the package. And I think Elon's also kind of hinting at the fact that utilities are going to kind of be heading that way, that all these tests in Europe and Australia with these microgrids with Powerwalls, it's just kind of getting out in front of it. They'll be in place, getting all the utilities to get on board. It'll be there and ready to go.
So, Paul, question for you. Did anyone think Elon's rant about power distribution and the need to ramp up was a call to arms for other companies to join the challenge, as much as a message about Tesla's intentions themselves? Do you think it was a call to arms? Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. Like, it's obvious. They're doing it. It's necessary. His rant was long and unwieldy, and there was a couple of points in there, but yeah, I think for sure. Yep.
So next point was Bitcoin. They referenced obviously for the first time tonight that Bitcoin had been sold, only $101 million worth. It was sold in March as well, which again, that only came about in the actual call itself. Anyone got any thoughts on the fact that they've sold some? James, put you on the spot.
Thanks, appreciate that. Not that I can think of. I'm guessing they were just, I don't know. I wouldn't even have a hazard to guess what they were thinking as they sold the 10% of their investment to Seed. It's an interesting proposal, what they're doing. Personally, I mean, this is just my personal opinion. I think it's a little early to start messing with cryptocurrency, but that's just a personal opinion.
Anyone else with any thoughts on crypto? You can nod or shake or otherwise. No comments. No comments on that. Going back to the tragedy in China, they obviously touched on that, which was, I think, sorely needed because there's been so much controversy in the last sort of 3 days.
Do you mean Texas?
You mean Houston?
Do
was in China, and the crash was in Houston.
Oh, okay. Then clearly I've got confused. I've seen three things out of China this week.
2 things going on at once. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So Andy, any thoughts on that?
Well, I thought they said rather a lot actually about that. When they say, because they basically said they couldn't download data from the car, and that someone's trying to hack into it to get the data from the car, which I thought was interesting. Then he talked again about he suggested that there was somebody in the driver's seat when the crash happened. But categorically saying again that autopilot was not, or auto steer was not engaged. Because obviously, if you look at the aerial picture, it only happened 500 feet from the guy's drive. It's phenomenal. When you actually look, I didn't realize until you actually look at a map of the crash, how it happened, right near the guy's drive. So it's almost like you think, well, the guy's just put his foot to the floor and driven into a tree. I mean, that's what it looks like to me. It's very bizarre. But yeah, there's obviously a lot of made up FUD about it for sure.
James, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's an unfortunate accident. I agree. It certainly looks like someone was doing a 0 to 60 right off the driveway and lost control. I don't see how there's any way that the FUD around someone not being in the driver's seat is remotely possible to have that kind of speed, to have that kind of impact. Like even with FSD beta, I don't see how that would ever be possible. And we know that's not a factor because the owner didn't even prepay or have FSD. So it certainly looks more like an unfortunate accident as someone making a poor decision on a city street with on a residential street.
Yeah.
And Josh, your thoughts? You didn't know he was on the screen.
Sorry, thanks for that, Will. Cheers.
I thought you were ready.
I was just hanging out in the background, and no, I've not seen too much on it. I think the key point I picked up on was it made mention of an SD card, which I found quite strange because I wasn't sure that it was actually storing anything on SD card. I thought it was all onboard flash storage. So I found that bit quite interesting because, like I said, that's the first thing I've heard of them using any sort of SD card. But he said they was unable to get any data from the SD card, whether that was just a terminology mishap or whatnot. But that was interesting for me.
Perfect. So they touched on the batteries as well. The fact about the nickel-based versus iron-based. I don't think there was anything particularly of interest there. Anyone think there was?
No.
No, lots of shaking of the heads.
No, but I was going to say, Will, sorry if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, of course.
The one thing I took away from that FSD conversation about the crash in Houston was they said the speed was 30 miles an hour. I don't know whether anyone else heard that, but they said the max speed was 30 miles an hour. How the fudge did the car have that bad an accident where it went up in flames at 30 miles an hour?
I thought he was implying if it was on autopilot, it wouldn't have done more than 30. Yes. But I thought the car hit the tree at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But
it had to be really fast to completely crush and catch fire.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So going back to that, there wasn't any reference to the China stuff at all, was there? Just to clarify.
No,
not at all.
Yeah, that's right. I obviously got it confused.
Yeah. That happened in February originally, and Tesla had already said to that lady they would actually pay an independent auditor to check over the data that they'd already given her, and she was like, "No, I don't want that. I just want you to pay me for the car." It's like, why would they do that? They'd already categorically stated that she was at fault. She was speeding.
Right. Got you. They then talked about stories about production hell. We've known for a long while that production hell is what it sounds like, production hell. They did reference a sort of funny, in inverted commas, story about Model X and USB cables. And I think Paul referenced the backstory to that. I think you knew a bit more about that. Maybe you could share that.
Yeah, from what I remember, it was the cable required to go from the MCU itself underneath the dash to the little USB ports in the center console. They couldn't get those, so they sent all their employees out to every Target, whatever store in the Bay Area, picking up all the USB cables. He went into it in depth. I think maybe one of the first Joe Rogan podcast or some other interview he did, but it was just a simple thing. They'd gotten a shipment, and it was the wrong cable. It was like, male to male, and it was supposed to be male to female or whatever they needed. And instead of like not having cars out on the road, they just went off and bought them all. That's the backstory as far as I remember.
And do you think that still to this day they have similar issues like that? Obviously, there's been a parts discussion these last few weeks. Do you either know anymore? Maybe James, maybe you have to jump in for some comments on that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Like we know that the outage in the storm in Texas caused some problems because that's where Samsung manufactured the FSD computer for them. So that they had 2-day outage there in Texas. So that there was that shortage. But as we know, there's a global shortage on semiconductors, and there's about 4 of the top semiconductor manufacturers, like 50 or 60% of their production is for automotive, and they're having huge shortages. So it's going to affect Tesla eventually.
And James, did you have any thoughts on that?
No, covered it well there. It's just, I think it's just the chip shortages. I think that's might be part of the problem with the S and X. I mean, with that new PS5 capable media computer. I mean, we all know PS5s and the new Xboxes are really hard to get a hold of. So I'm guessing Tesla's having the same issues getting those kind of graphics cards, chips.
And just to clarify, and I think I heard it right, there was no difference or reference to any battery changes with S and X. Is that fair?
You mean compared to 18s? Yeah, I think they're doing a new battery cell design for S and X. I don't know specific details. I'm assuming the 2170, except for the
new battery, definitely for S and X.
Definitely.
And he said that was part of the problem, was sorting that battery out. Because I
was Plaid Plus, right?
As well.
Yeah, sorry. So let's just get this clear. So this is for Plaid Plus versus the standard Plaid. Standard Plaid was still going to stick with the 18650.
No, I don't think so. I think he kind of suggested it was for the Plaid. The Plaid Plus is definitely the 4680. And he did mention a timescale for that. And I couldn't work out whether it was 12 to 18 months or 8 to 12 months. Because he was sort of slightly muffled as he was talking. But they definitely still got a problem with the 4680.
Yeah. And any other thoughts on that from anyone else?
There was an interesting comment that he slipped in about battery safety as well. And I think it was to do with that, the Blade and Blade Plus. So there's obviously still a fair bit of R&D to do before it's going to hit the road.
Yeah, I think that's very good. So that's all of my notes from my side. We've got a few comments coming through, but does anyone else have anything that they would like to say or think that's been missed, or any other comments?
Did he make a comment about the X being Q3?
Yeah,
and that was different to S, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So S is Q2, X is Q3. Yeah, it's interesting.
So why do you think that could be?
I don't know. Maybe there's more orders for the S, and they're just going to do it first. Because I would imagine the changes to both are the same, and maybe they can make a bit more money on the S. So again, they're driven by, making back money as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and again, if you're going back to the chip shortage and things like that, go with a more profitable vehicle first, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah.
If the S is more profitable as a speculative thought, go for that. Produce as many as you can. Wait for the chips. Like you say, it's an industry thing that's not specifically Tesla, but I think that's probably going to be around for the remainder of the year. I would guess is that shortage. So yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat, I thought it sounded like 4680 is taking longer. I think the 4680 is still a real challenge.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
Real challenge. Yeah.
Well, that's going to affect Cybertruck and Model Y out of Berlin as well, right?
I would have thought so. Yeah.
Yeah. There was some chatter I'm in a WhatsApp group with a bunch of nerds, and they're all just jabbering on about the Cybertruck probably being delayed if they haven't got 4680 squared away. Now they're saying the production from Cato Road isn't quite ready for production vehicles yet. So we're assuming that will be where they'll get batteries for the Cybertruck initially, until the factory that they're building in Texas is able to produce its own batteries. And the same applies to Berlin as well.
Yeah, I think wasn't his words they weren't quite of the quality to put in cars yet.
Yeah.
I think is the sort of the term he used, wasn't it?
The question is about quality. Is it the catchy, fiery type of quality issue, or is it the degradation type of fire issue, or type of issue? The latter, I'm okay with. The catchy, fiery issue, not so much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect. Well, thank you for everyone that's watching. Unless anyone else has got anything else to say, feel free to jump in. But we just thought tonight was a bit of fun and chill out with a beer and watch this Q1 2021 update. For those that are still watching, ir.tesla.com if you want to have a look at the PDF. And yeah, please subscribe to Tesla Owners UK on YouTube, Twitter, etc., etc. And yeah, thank you for watching. Yeah, thanks for everyone for joining. It was very, very relaxed and a nice chat. Nice to see you all. And yeah, we'll catch up soon.
Talk soon.
Cool. Good to see you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.